I need to be going to the gym as many times and this and that, all this shit. And I was like, yeah, but you don't have confidence in yourself. You don't believe that you'll do that. It's so important to have MVPs in every single area because they allow you to build your confidence.
Hello there, and welcome to Leveling Up Education. We have a very special podcast episode for you today where we talk deep about the neuroscience and where all of this scientific literature comes from, and going deep into mental health and awareness, because this is just something we don't really talk about in school, and especially with educators are not being trained in that, and students have no idea why they're like feeling terrible. That's why I wanted to have this conversation with Cody. I've been talking with Cody for 2 years now. A mutual friend of ours introduced us, and we've been having these conversations on a monthly basis. And Cody, you come from neuroscience, and I know you focus a lot on like mental health and awareness. So what do you think is the most important thing that people need to be aware of?
Yeah, I think the most important thing, and what I spend like the majority of my life helping people understand, is how their mind, brain, and body are interconnected. Like they are three separate things, but they are also inseparable. And I feel like that's like the key thing, key distinction that people miss when they're trying to solve mental health, emotional health problem, even physical health problems in relation to improving their life in some way, whether it's like mental health, emotional health, physical health, whatever.
It does make sense that like you focus so much on that, because I think if the mental health is not solved, and I think this is where we need to start from, because someone who like suffers with that, and like I personally have never really suffered from that, so I don't think like I can understand where like people are coming from. But from stories what I heard, like people compare depression with like basically the worst kind of illnesses, because it completely like shatters whatever is going on in your life.
Oh yeah. Depression is terrifying because the effect it has on your physical body. I mean, you're more likely to die. You're more likely to get a heart disease, more likely to get diabetes, more likely to. I mean, it's insane. Like how it can affect your mind, or how something in your mind and brain can affect your body and the rest of you as well. It's something a lot of people don't think about. Most people have experienced it in some way. They don't necessarily understand how trauma affects them. They don't understand what is mental health versus mental illness, different things like that. It's an interesting concept or cornucopia to kind of dive into.
Yeah, and I think it can be terrifying, because in one place, like your life is completely in order, and then the second day, like something happens. Like I've had a friend whose girlfriend broke up with him. He was really solid in like different areas of life, but like this one thing completely derailed him for months. And I didn't know what to do in that situation, because I'm not a trained therapist, right? And like for me personally, I have very low levels of neuroticism. I don't think it's just that. Is it connective with neuroticism? Because this is always how I feel like, okay, it's just low neuroticism means you experience a lot lower or like fewer negative emotions. Is that connected to like how likely it is that you can become depressed?
It can be. There's a lot. It's like your buddy in a abuse or not abusive, but he was like just broke up, just got out of a relationship. That's like some of the deepest attachments we have as humans are human to human connection. And so an attachment rupture in relation to a significant other, like a boyfriend, girlfriend, mom, dad, whatever, are some of the most powerful, potent, like jarring things that can happen to us. And so after a breakup, there's a lot that's going on. Like you're going through the grief cycle, you're going through an attachment rupture. If it was an abusive relationship, you might be trying to break a trauma bond, which you're neurologically addicted to that person in that negative, like really bad, really good cycle. So there's a couple of things that can lead to that depressive like feeling, or lead to that really crappy period of where you're just like low on energy, fatigued, tired, can't be motivated, can't get off the couch, you're sleeping in, you're eating crappy. That might be tied to neuroticism, but again, attachment ruptures are huge. That's why breakups universally suck for everybody.
Like I also feel like that there are like two sides of the extreme, because unless you like fall in this depression, people just tell you to get over it. And it's not really something considered, okay, when someone dies, yes, you can take off 1 day off of work, but like everything else is weird. And considering on how impactful this is, and if you think about it, a breakup is almost like a loss, because you just don't have this person in your life anymore. And
it is a loss.
for sure. And just society either saying, get over it, or to the point where like you're deeply depressed and saying, oh, now you get like help or treatment. But it's the same thing with burnout. Like people don't take it seriously until it happens. And I think this is way too late. What about preventative practices, or just saying, hey, like this was a big deal for me. Can I like take off like not just one day? And I don't think you even are allowed to take one day off of work if you experience a breakup in like most companies, right? That's not even a thing.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough how to, especially out here in America, in the westernized world. Kids
Yeah.
go. Whether it's burnout, whether it's a breakup. I was just talking about this with some guys yesterday. There's just not time. Like I know, based on my training, I know exactly what your mind, brain, and body need to recover and like get better. And it is not what society allows for. And it doesn't, like, on how fast you have to get going and how like got to be up by 5 a.m., got to get this done, got to do this. Go. And that's just not, like, your nervous system needs time to chill, especially burnout. Like you've got to actually recover. Like going on a vacation and for a couple of weeks to get out of it. But if you're still thinking about it and you have emails coming in, it doesn't help you when you're burnt out. And you need extra time to chill. It's just about getting through it. So many people want some quick fix or some magic pill, but like your nervous system can't heal itself. You just got to give yourself time. And we just don't have time. Meaning we don't make time. But
and it's not just like that you need this recovery, but like the quality of work that you're outputting, it's not going to be like to the standards. So and if you're not going to perform at these standards, it makes almost more sense to say, hey guys, I'm not able to like do how I want to deliver the work. And if I continue doing this, it will just gradually get worse to the point where I'm completely like gone and burned out. But like, first of all, people don't realize on how bad it can be. That's happened to my dad. He was just like, oh, I just need to get over this. And I feel like my mom is currently also facing like this just overwork, because every time she's, oh, I just got to get past this period of stress. But like when you're working in a bigger company, like it is
there's a name for this. So burnout is not a thing. It is a cycle. It's called the binge burnout cycle. And what happens is you get to the height of anxiety where it's like, oh, you're like, holy crap, I've got so much to get done. I'm overwhelmed. I've got more to do than I have time to do. And so you try to juggle all the things and try to juggle all the plates and do all the stuff, which eventually leads to the burnout, which is like a depressive stage where you're just like, your nervous system is just like too overwhelmed to do anything. And so you get through it and recover and feel a little bit better. And then you're like, okay, next time I'm going to do better. I'm not going to get overwhelmed. I'm not going to take as much on. I'll do better next time. And then slowly over time, you creep back up into that hyper anxious stage where you're like, crap, I've got so much to do. There's a deadline, or you get sick. So then you're behind in your work and you've got extra to do. And then you're juggling all the stuff and you burn out. I'll do better next time. Anxiety. And it's this binge burnout cycle that people get stuck in.
So what would you recommend for people to get out of this cycle or break out?
The first step is awareness. So just listening to what I just said and being aware, oh shit, I'm in the binge burnout cycle. That's the first step. The next step is starting to become, once you're aware of it, starting to realize, like what things lead me to this place. Figuring out what resources are available to you is like the first step. You got to create some level of external safety and security and like health, where what environment are you in and what like control do you have over that environment externally? So if you can go to your boss or you can go to your school and say, hey, I am burnt out, I'm overwhelmed, I'm anxious, I'm not sleeping, like I need a break. A lot of the times, like I went to a smaller liberal arts college, and if I did that to my counselor at the time at Simpson where I went, they would be like, okay, let's pause, let's chill, let's just give you a mental break. And they'll let you like chill a little bit. That's becoming more of a thing. So see if that's possible. That's the first step. Externally. And then internally, you can start to be, as you become more aware of this, you can start to figure out what things get you going. I like to name things. I call them parts. My training is in internal family systems psychotherapy on the psychology side and cognitive behavioral neuroscience on the brain side. So in IFS, internal family systems, IFS, they consider all of us having multiple parts, and like very literally. So there are different parts that can lead to burnout. If you're an anxious achiever, like the two people on this podcast, you may tend towards burnout because you want to achieve. There's more to do. There's more to get done. I want to be remembered. I don't want to be forgotten. I want to leave an impact in the world. And that anxious achiever, that part of us can lead us to burnout. For some people, it's perfectionism. Some people, it could be people pleasing. Some people, they want to please their parents. They want to please society, whatever. There are different parts of you that shift your behavior towards more burnout, right? Where you're starting to take on more than you can handle. Or some people, it's the belief, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not right. I'm not enough. And so if I do more, I will become enough. And so some people, it's a high functioning anxiety. These are all different parts. And if you could start to recognize what part it is for you, for me, it's like the achiever. Like I want to go achieve more. I want to be remembered. And so I've got to talk to that part, truly, literally, and ask that part, hey, what do you want me to know about you? What are you afraid would happen if you didn't cause me to be so anxious about achieving? Like, how old do you think I am? And talk to that part and really ask it, hey, what's going on? Or when you're feeling burnt out, how old do you feel? That's a really good question to ask yourself.
Ooh, okay.
So those would be external safety and like figuring out what's going on externally, and then doing the work internally to figure out what parts lead you to this place, and then building a relationship with those parts and starting to build their trust in like your innate ability to handle your shit, because your parts don't know, they're trying to protect you. That achiever's trying to protect you from something, and they just don't get that, oh, I'm burning you out. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and I think when you are able to reflect on these things and you gain awareness through that by talking to these parts in, for example, meditation, then I think things become all like way less scary, first of all, and it also allows you to zoom out. And something that I always like to remember is like I have certain role models in my life. And I'm pretty sure that Steve Jobs would be one of those role models if he was still alive. So I'm thinking like, okay, if he had treated like his body better, if he had focused more on his health, maybe he wouldn't have released like the iPad this year, but like it would have been delayed by 1 year, but maybe he'd still be alive today. And I think just like the fact of, okay, you staying alive an additional year, which I think you said all the way in the beginning, because like trauma and stress and depression literally reduce your lifespan. So many people tend to trade their health for money when they're young, but then when they're older, they trade their money to gain back that health, which seems like a weird cycle. But that's why I personally like to think about preventative practices. So it doesn't even get that bad. What would be like one of the better preventative practices so we don't even enter the circle?
Yeah, there's 6 areas that I focus on. It's something called the hero's body. So you and I are very big on like heroes. It's part of what I call living heroically, which helps you get out of the binge burnout cycle, which is having a clear vision for your future and your purpose clearly defined, and being happy in the present moment. So instead of trying to do, you're being. That's a big difference.
Gotcha.
Like most people do have be as opposed to be, do, have. And so they want to have first.
Gotcha.
They want to have happiness. They want to have peace. They want to have money. So they do random shit so they can be rich, so they can be happy. But that's backwards. And that gets you to burnout. As opposed to if you can be happy and be successful and be content right now, you can do things on purpose and then have whatever you want. And so that's like the mindset shift. And then as far as like literally day to day, that's the mindset of living heroically. The 6 areas I focus on are something for your mind every day: sleep, exercise, nutrition, social connection, and play. And having something, a habit, pattern, routine in each of those areas is super, super important. And having an MVP in each of those areas is even more important. Where you're doing one thing in each of those areas.
Yeah.
So for example, maybe you want to work out. Ideally, you want to go get an hour workout. And like you're in the gym doing like weight training. Let's just say it's weight training. That's your ideal. But you could also have an MVP, which is a minimum vital production that is like a laughable version of that habit. And so I was working with this guy once, and he was like 300 pounds overweight, #America. And he came to me after going to nutritionists, dietitians, exercise scientists, neuroendocrinologists, all this crazy stuff. And in our first meeting, I was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. I want you to start doing 1 push-up a day. He's like, what? I was like, yeah, we're just going to do 1 push-up a day. That's your MVP. I can do 1 push-up a day. I could do more than that. I was like, let's just do 1. And he's like, what the hell? Everybody, all these other super smart people told me I need to be eating this. I need to be going to the gym as many times and this and that, all this shit. And I was like, yeah, but you don't have confidence in yourself. You don't believe that you'll do that. We started with 1 push-up and he's like, dude, I did it. Every single day last week, I did my 1 push-up. I was like, congratulations, man.
Nice.
You're putting coins in the piggy bank of your new identity. You're the second version, the heroic version of yourself. And he's like, hell yeah. And so from 1 push-up a day, we helped him lose like 300 pounds, where he was doing all of the going to the gym and getting a full hour workout. We got there, but it started with the MVP, minimum vital production of 1 push-up. And that's why it's so important to have MVPs in every single area, because they allow you to build your confidence. And it doesn't always have to be 1 push-up. It could be 10 squats. It could be
it can be whatever, or like just read 1 page when it's for your mind, or like just reach out to one person, because it's like for every area there are like different MVPs, right? I think I'm going to start integrating that. But you were just saying you work with these people in coaching and therapy. And I assume it's like there's a similar situation that is currently in education, that there are just not enough coaches or therapists or teachers out there. Because like we have almost this pandemic of too many people starting to become stressed and overwhelmed and burnt out and just like experiencing all of these traumas they have no idea of dealing with. And I know like you are currently working on something to mitigate that. So can you go into that a little bit deeper on like this lack of teachers, coaches, therapists could be solved in the future?
Yeah, for sure. So the biggest thing, you're 100% right. I know the therapy and mental health space like the best and stats in this realm. For example, in the United States, in 2022, we were freaking 47,000 mental health providers short of the need. 87% of people are not getting the mental health support that they need. In 2025, we'll be 150,000 mental health providers short. That's therapists, psychiatrists, counselors, psychologists. Will be short that amount. That is wild. It's nuts. And so there's so much demand and so much need, it's impossible to keep up. We're not putting enough mental health professionals in the world and in the working force. And when I'm controversial statement, but the ones that are out there are not always the best. I mean, I work with people that come to me after traditional talk therapy has not worked, or some therapist or some counselor gave them advice that made their situation worse, especially in relation to trauma. And so there's not enough of them, and there's a lot of them that are not doing a great job. They have their own crap, and they're trying to externalize that and help other people without healing themselves first. And that's scary. It's awesome they want to help, but it's doing more harm than good. So there's not enough people, period. And the people that are not always the best. I've worked with some really awesome ones. I love them. I have nothing against them. I'm just stating the facts. And so that's the problem. I was just at a mental health and technology conference or a meetup last week, and we were talking about how technology can help with this, or can help with solve this problem. And it's not about replacing therapists. It's a project I'm working on right now is something called My Companion, which is a conversational AI that's in your pocket 24/7 that helps you. It's tailor-made for complex PTSD and trauma.
That's so cool.
And so it's like a digital version, like a trauma therapist in your pocket that you can text back and forth with. It's analyzing your biometric data, like with a Whoop device or an Apple Watch. It's analyzing your social media data. It can do all of these things and collect more data than any therapist or any human could be able to collect, first and foremost. And second of all, it's giving you tailored to you suggestions. And so it's things like that that I think can really help solve this problem. And again, it's not about replacing therapists, because there aren't therapists to replace. We're short 47,000 of them. We're not replacing anybody. From my perspective, it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of people out there don't need hardcore go to a therapist, sit down. They need really basic stuff that a conversational AI could help with. And then 20% of people need to go to therapists. And so the way that I look at it is something like a conversation, like My Companion is more like triage and less like replacement. If you have a therapist, My Companion can make that therapy better. based on the simple fact that if your HRV is improving,
Yep.
it's objective measurements of your mental health. So the therapist knows, this is helping my client versus it's not. And that's my companion if you have a therapist. And then my companion for the 87% of people who can't get or can't access, afford, or find a therapist or mental health support, it can help those people and be better than nothing and a lot better than nothing, because it's just how things are moving, have to move towards. It's hard, it's controversial, there's data, there's a freaking ton of roadblocks I'm trying to get through right now, but we'll get there.
AI is becoming more and more dominant, and not everyone has your best interest in mind. Something that we can do is get this AI companion that like helps us shield from like these negative AI that helps us today. This is what you have to do. This is like what you should focus on. And I think we're slowly getting there.
And that's a big piece of it. It's interesting because something that I've learned recently is why Siri sucks so bad. Like you see ChatGPT and all these language models that are coming out that are so much better than Siri. And I recently learned why. It's because Apple doesn't throw your data up into a cloud. It keeps it on your device in a chip on your phone. And so it's not analyzing all of the data. It's not shoving all of your data into a cloud with everyone else's data. It's keeping all of it like on your local device, which makes it a lot harder to train a model that could make Siri better. And so that's an example of a way that a company, which is one of the most profitable companies in history, is making money and having an impact while also protecting your data and keeping you completely secure and safe.
Yeah, and I think this is where things are headed, because at the moment we can build something like ChatGPT or Bard on quantitative data, meaning that we just feed this model with like as much data as we can possibly fit in there. Eventually it will come out with something good. But it is also the average of everything that you feed in. So if you feed in like certain levels of garbage, it's also going to get garbage out of that. So if we were to have these localized systems where it says, hey, like this is the data that I want to refer to. And I think this is what a lot of like bigger personalities are currently working on, like someone like Peter Diamandis or Chris Do. They're creating their own bots, their own chatbots, where they feed or like train their own language model and say, this is what I've written. This is the references for that. This is the data that you can use. And then suddenly it's not this generative model that is fed with quantitative data, but instead it's this qualitative data that will give you much more personalized feedback. And I think over time, like we will have this as like private consumers. It's not just for the big rich who can afford that, but it will come to us eventually that it runs locally on all your data. And that's why something like a reflection practice, the more you write down and internalize and speak what's going on with you and what helps you, the better this companion app will be able to serve you. Because, hey, you remember 3 years ago, something very similar happened where you also had a breakup and you had to do these steps to get out of this. So now you should do these steps. And there's also more scientific literature that just came out that kind of adds a fourth one that will make this recovery from like the trauma even faster. So I think this is where the future of eye therapy and coaching will go.
It's a digital version of me that allows you to aggregate all of your information data. It's trained on a specific knowledge base that's focused on trauma-focused therapies. And then we use reinforcement learning with human feedback to help train up the model to make sure it's safe, effective, and unbiased in its responses to our actual users. And so when I'm thinking about, it's not just pulling from random internet data, it's pulling from corpuses of scientific research and literature, books, training manuals, things like that, in like internal family systems, somatic experiencing, compassionate inquiry, those types of specific things. And then we can start to aggregate these types of data. And I'm literally meeting with, I don't know if you've heard of this, but Numenta. I don't know if Numenta, but I fucking love Numenta. It's a research lab that's really focused on blending neuroscience and AI. And they just came out with their model that is, it's based more on neumorphics. How can a language model be more like the human brain? And the breakthrough thing about this is that it runs on CPUs instead of GPUs. So the number one reason Google has to shove your data up into a cloud is because there's a GPU farm that cloud is running on. And that's the only way language models have been able to function so far, is shoving a shit ton of GPUs into a farm and running the models. But Numenta's new model will allow you to run it on your CPU, and that means on your iPhone. You can run a model locally on an iPhone that doesn't kill your battery, but if you can run a model locally on your iPhone, and Apple is storing all of your personal data locally, the bridge is what needs to be built. And that's what I'm literally meeting with them later today to talk to them about starting to use that model. That is, I mean, are you kidding me? Like the power of GPT on your phone in a protected, safe environment, especially an iPhone, it's like this close to being able to do that kind of stuff. It's so much closer than people think it is. And that's exactly the vision of My Companion. And it's not just for the rich. We're going to market with a pay what you want model. So My Companion is completely free for anyone who needs it. And if you can afford to pay something, you can pay it forward to help people who can't afford it. So we're a public benefit corporation.
There's this amazing quote that I keep referring back to. Like, a healthy man has many wishes, but a sick man only has one. And if we can reduce the number of people who feel sick, who feel burned out, we can have all of these dreamers who can think about, okay, how can I make a contribution? How can I become this hero? Because this is what we are about. We want to create more heroes in the world because we're most definitely not short on problems. There's so many things we need to work on. And like the more brains we get like on these problems, the better it is. And I think this companion app just allows so many more people to work on that, to contribute something positive.
Yeah, 100% agree.
So what does your future look like? What you want to essentially create with the companion app?
Yeah, I mean, my end game is always and will always be creating a human AI operating system that unites humanity and shifts human evolution so that everyone can live a happy, purpose-filled life and eradicate suffering. Like that's my MTP, or massively transformative purpose. I know you know what that is, but not everyone will. And so that's my end game. And I really think helping people with mental and emotional health at first is a good way to start down that path. But that will also involve neurotechnology, biotechnology, nanotechnology, more advanced quantum technologies in the future. But where I'm at today is My Companion is trying to aggregate some of this data. But that's what I'm trying to get, where we are an interconnected species, where we're no longer, if I had complete empathy, right now I can have empathy for you and you can have empathy for me. We can't ever I can't actually know what it's like to sit in your shoes. Neurologically, I cannot. I don't have your past. I don't have your history. I don't have the knowledge you have. I don't have the same traumas. It's just impossible for me to literally sit in your shoes. However, in the future, I really think that we could learn how to, and we could experience for ourselves some of the things that light up in someone else's brain in an argument. And I really think that could interconnect us as a species. And if I had total empathy and compassion for you, and you had total empathy and compassion for me, we would stop arguing and we would get to the solution faster. And yes, I'm all about like getting more heroes into the world, but heroes still butt heads. Even the Justice League, even the Avengers. Have you seen Civil War? Avengers, like Civil War, Captain America, Iron Man are fighting, right? They had total empathy for one another. They would be able to come to a joint conclusion together. And that's what I really want to be able to get to long term, is that human AI operating system. Because I just imagine if there are aliens out there, I guarantee they're looking down on us. They're like, they still make individual decisions, even though they all live on the same speck in the center of the universe. Like, how do they not make global decisions, even though a decision one of these countries makes can affect the entire globe? They're gonna what? Like, aliens just got to look at us so confused that we don't make decisions that are best for everyone on the planet. We make selfish decisions, and we wouldn't do that, from my perspective, if we were all interconnected and had actual true empathy for one another. So that's where I want to go eventually.
Okay. So that would be the next logical step. So in a way, we get, by having access to more of this data, by understanding more what's going on, not just like in ourselves, but also in others, as well as on a global scale, we would almost have And something that you're describing, and I'm not sure if you've read the Foundation series, but it's very similar to what they call with Gaia, where there is this planet that like everyone is an individual, so they still have their own desires, their wishes, their needs, their like goals that they want to achieve, but they are also connected to this greater level of consciousness, like how
Right.
an ant is connected to an ant colony. But I don't think an ant has a lot of individuality. It's basically, okay, I'm going to sacrifice everything for the colony. I think something that is important is that we retain our individuality, but realize that we are part of this humanity, and it's just silly to threaten ourselves with nuclear war, because that's literally shooting ourselves in the foot, right?
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I'm talking about, like getting to that. And it's really the convergence of some of the technology we've been talking about. The more data we start to collect, our personal AI start to collect on us, they can start to create digital versions of us and digital representations of our brains. And the more we learn about neuroscience, the more we learn about psychology, the more we map our own like connectome, like our brains, and learn more about that, the more we'll be able to create digital representations of our brains and how our brains work and how, like, what things cause X thing in our brain. We don't know that. When you see the color blue and I see the color blue, different things are happening in our brain, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know why that happens yet. The research is just not there yet. And so we're getting there. We're getting closer. It's like the convergence of neuroscience research, technology, like exponential type technologies that will allow us to do that. And then how do we create that bigger level of consciousness? It's things like Neuralink, like the magic hat. What's his name? I forgot his name that he talks
Tim
about,
Urban.
but yeah, Tim Urban. I freaking love that guy.
So
where we're all connected in this different way. And I agree. It's you, me, and we, right?
Yeah.
Those three things that allow us to be individuals while also being connected and belonging and like part of something bigger than ourselves. And it's a really unique and special balance to map out.
I do see that happening. And while we're like completely in this sci-fi world, let's think this through and maybe also get back to reality a little bit. But something that, or maybe you disagree with me on that, but like to the point where we start uploading our minds, it's still us, but we're not really humans anymore. It's always like this. And I think this is what a lot of people say about AI, is let's just not implement like these emotions in AI, fear or kind of disgust or something like that. Because first of all, it's super complicated. And second of all, it just doesn't really serve you in that moment. I think this is where things get like really complicated, because we're starting to move away from humanity. But then what is humanity? And I would argue like someone where we respect all life forms equally and try to get to a greater form of truth and understanding would be much more preferable than, I don't know, just throwing shit at each other on social media. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, we're getting into like techno-humanism, transhumanism, like things like that. I don't know. I can't see a future where something like that doesn't start to happen, where we're starting to merge. And that's why in my MTP, shifting human evolution is a part of it, because that would be a shift in human evolution. The more and more that we get to technology, like we're merging. I think the fourth layer of our brain will be a technological layer.
But maybe to go to a little bit more practical side of the conversation, what people need to expect in the future, and like even the near future, is that ultimately technology is a tool that you use and it makes your life easier. So whatever you're doing right now, it will become easier because you get all of these assistants, you get these companions, you get this technology like the iPhone and eventually the Vision Pro that just enhances your senses. And that's where it's important that you not just disregard it because, oh, it's evil technology and it will, I don't know, go all Skynet on us, but saying, okay, they may be a Skynet in the future, but over time, we need our own AI to protect us from Skynet. And just like closing our eyes and pretending it's not there doesn't help anyone. So staying informed what's happening, seeing the progress, leveraging the tools as they are, and just enjoying life. Because just imagine how much more time you would have if you don't have to do the grunt work. Belgium recently introduced the 4-hour work week, and I feel like more and more people will go in the direction where you just don't have to work 40 hours every week anymore. maybe I think eventually we will get to the point where you only work if you want to work, because AIs and computers and just like the um, demand on certain things will sort itself out, and then we can almost touch concepts like a basic universal income or something like that. But over time, I just like
UBI.
um, over time, it will just go towards, hey, you don't have to work if you don't want to work, because we
Right.
will have these technologies that will make everything so much easier. We have 80 billion people on the planet now. We don't need to just look at farmers. We used to have 80% of the population just producing food. I think we're at 8 now. And I think this will become even less with like more machines automating that. And this will go into every kind of industry. At the moment, like all the offices, the assistants, the people who just like filling out Excel sheets, this will be done by AI. I know I've read this story about this Chinese company who fired from today of tomorrow like 20,000 employees because AI can translate better and faster than they could. So they just didn't need translators anymore. So all these legal documents that had to be translated in this like very complicated Chinese, oh yeah, it took you 2 weeks. Our AI takes 2 minutes. Bye.
But I mean, I think this does also bring up the fact that there are legitimate, there is a legitimate like manufacturing, like farmers, like knowledge workers, like different
Of
things like
course.
that will be out of jobs. And I think that's a big poo-poo that people put on AI and technical innovation. First of all, it's like trying to stop a tsunami. So, I mean, get on board. That's my
Yeah.
first like direct perspective. But the other thing is like legitimately, if you're a factory worker, your job gets cut, what do you do? But I think what people forget is that these tools can also help us reskill and upskill people into higher level different things faster and more you like personalized to that person. If you have your own personal AI that can reskill and retool you for a different job or whatever faster, that's awesome. Like upskilling, reskilling,
Yeah, for
to
sure.
where you're not having to do like dangerous, dirty, and I forgot the other D type of jobs. I think there's a big fear that those things are going away, and that's the livelihood of somebody. That's the reason they wake up in the morning a lot of the times. So, like psychologically, I could see why it's scary that this AI stuff is the big AI monsters coming to get everything, because it's not just what will I do next? It's not just their job. I could speak especially in the US. Our jobs are a huge part of who we are and our identity, of why we wake up in the morning, what we get up to do, what
Exactly.
we're
Yeah.
doing tomorrow, what we're going to do in the future. And it's really hard. And I can understand, I can empathize with people on like why it's scary to hear some of this stuff if they don't have a way to learn how to shift their life in accordance with just being and doing what they want and still having a purpose, and that just not being their job necessarily. I feel like that'll be a big, huge hurdle that we'll have to work through and get.
And to like combat the problem of, okay, what do I do with my life? And we've talked about this a lot before. And just like focusing on the things that do make us human. Because I think just slaving away in a 9 to 5 is not things that are inherently human. But things are human is like playing games together, connecting together, having these interesting conversations, being able to go outside in nature. And I think this is what we are both working on in terms of, okay, how can we show people like, hey, like life is fucking great, but you need certain manuals to understand what helps you get in a good mood, what helps you stay healthy. And once you are healthy, you can become like Superman and have fun with your friends and just be creative and play games and enjoy. And I think this is what a lot of people will struggle with in the beginning on, okay, how can I like live life without this job that takes up 90% of my like available time? Learn new skills. Let's practice sports. Let's read about topics that we always wanted to learn. And I think if we look at this kind of future, I find this extremely desirable. And I'm like doing everything in my power to get that closer, to empower people to just enjoy all areas of life, because life is so rich and there's so many things you can explore. You can become the greatest storyteller. And I think these things will always be in place, but instead of just doing the executing, one of the things that I think we as humans will do for the longest is just asking questions and creating stuff. And yes, AI will help us with that and we'll move much faster. But AI doesn't really have this autonomy to, oh, I choose to do that now. It needs a certain command. So that's ultimately our purpose of humans, to use AI to do something. Like, we still need to say what to do with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think a big piece of it is the beliefs. So you paint the pretty future and go all futuristic on people, but at the end of the day, we're trying to shift people's beliefs, and that's going to be the biggest wave. So I spend a lot of time thinking about, for example, like how it's so hard to change someone's belief. You don't just mystically change a belief. People need to experience and see the things you're talking about. And I think things like Apple Vision Pro, that's a good place. Like the Meta Quest, like all that kind of stuff can start to see, but I think it'll take a lot of demonstration to really shift people's beliefs. You have an example, and that's how our brains work. And because we form these reference frames. And so it's going to take things like that to really get people on the page of, because they just have never experienced what it's like to not have a job that gives them purpose. They've never experienced what it's like just to create and play games. And people, because I get a lot of pushback when I get too like all like wonderlust and utopian whatever, that it's just not like that. And I've realized that they just don't have the belief. They can't see it. They've never experienced it. They can't see it. And so that's why I think it's really important for people like this podcast, creators, people like Peter Diamandis, like that allow people to experience things and see things and see it, feel it, hear it, taste it, smell it, because that can start to shift beliefs. That's the only way we'll ever get to the future we want to get to.
It's a process. It's one step, and something that I like to start off people is, hey, are you celebrating your wins? And if we were to actually take the time to celebrate, to enjoy what we have done, not just the big thing, but like also the small thing. And overall, I think what it's mostly about is enjoying the journey. So like wherever the future is going to head and whatever is going to happen, hey, am I enjoying this journey as good as I can be? And if that's not the case, maybe I need help. Maybe I need to look for someone. Maybe I need like a companion app that can guide me towards a more fulfilled life, a life that kind of helps me to celebrate the small wins, that guides me away from doom scrolling on social media, that reminds me that I should eat certain kinds of food. And from there on, life becomes much more enjoyable as soon as we like remove the sickness and then move towards like whatever future we want to create. All right, I think we're basically out of time, Cody. It was an amazing experience. We touched so many topics. I hope we didn't lose like so many people on the way. But if people have questions and want to go deeper with you, how can they reach you?
Mindbrainbodylab.com.
Amazing. All right. So that was for this episode, and I'll see you at the next level.